Okay, well, thanks a lot for coming. What we tried to do, this is pretty. I love those mountains, but I guess that's not what we're talking about today. What we're doing here is trying to focus a little bit on this part of the state, although a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about will fit anywhere. So if you feel like you're in the wrong one and you want to move, that's okay. If you feel like you're going to get what you need here, you can stay here. We have several winners in each one of these districts that we have asked if they wanted to share what they have done. And I kind of broke this down into two categories. We have the captains that were actually working with the teams of farmers, and they are able to speak, or maybe there's even the farmers themselves that are here. And then the other thing is the sponsors. And I think this is a really good time to find out what some of these guys are doing. I had more cheat sheets with me, and I already lost one of them, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we have here. In terms of crop reporting districts in the state of Illinois, this is going to be distracting, isn't it? Everybody's enhanced by the bubbles. In terms of crop reporting districts, we have 9 crop reporting districts in the state of Illinois. The northern regions, 1 and 2, kind of go from the west side to the east side, kind of cut down there by old Route 51 or Interstate 39. That's kind of where those divisions are. And they're, well, we suggested people north of 24. It actually is somewhere between 24 and 80 that division line goes through. So you might know where your crop reporting district is. It's not a big factor. We also kind of want to divide it out, not have everybody in this room, because a lot of people that were registered were in this crop reporting district. So I'm glad to see that we haven't used every one of the chairs yet. The southern region has 4 districts in it, and the center of it has 3 districts. So 3, 4, and 5 go across the center of the state. That's what we're talking about, being in the west, center part, and then over in the east. And then we've got 4 more districts in the southern Illinois, and they're stacked on each other. So you got 6, 7, 8, and 9. This year was very encouraging to us. We had people start out in every district. Last year we didn't have a lot of people in districts 8 and 9. We had some real weather conditions, and some of our teams kind of fell apart in district 8. And you know, when you're trying to get your crop in, you start saying, I might not get this project done. But we did have finishing teams in 9, so those are being dealt with in other rooms. Our winners in our district, I'm going to name them off here, was CPS Ferris. Is anybody here from CPS Ferris? Sponsored by BASF, and AJ is here, and they sponsored a lot of the people that won in districts in the central district. So also CPS Blandonsville. Do we have somebody from here? I thought, yeah, okay. And I'd like you to be able to speak to us a little bit later. Sunrise FS. Anyone here from Sunrise? Okay. Agland FS. And so far, all of these had BASF as a sponsor, but they did other things as well. And then the name of the team was a Good Fifth, and that was probably because of somebody's name, I think, wasn't it? It's Scott Good, and he put that together for Stone Seed, the Stone Seed group. And we have 2 or 3 people here that I know are able to speak on that. And also Vincent's Seed Service. And this is the second year that Vincent's been in this. First year, he's a channel bio dealer. Is Ted here? Okay, and then he is also this year sponsored by BASF. So what I'd kind of like to do is invite you to come on up, and let's start with Dustin. Are you here? Are you Dustin? Yep. Okay, why don't you come up here and we'll share a mic with you and tell us a little bit about what your experiences were as a captain of this, and some of the things you guys did, and some of the things you learned, what you achieved out of it. I don't think we're on yet. Yeah. Let's go on the red side here. I think. Okay, your light's on. Can you hear me? It was on? It's lit up now.
Hello?
Take this one.
I'm Dustin Rothkamp from CPS in Blandonsville. I didn't really prepare for this much. So basically, we sprayed headline fungicide on all of the challenge plots with a Tombstone Helios insecticide. It's just a synthetic pyrethroid. And then also we sprayed a product called Radiate, which is a growth hormone, establishes root systems is the main benefit. And then also with the headline and insecticide at R3, we sprayed a product called Reinforced K. It's foliar nitrogen and potash. Helps utilize nutrient uptake. That's what we did on, I'd say, 9 out of 10 plots. I think there was 1 or 2 that didn't have the Reinforced K, but most of them did.
So what kind of response did you get?
I don't know. You got, I think our average, do you have that here?
Yes, I do. Let's see. I'll get you here in a second. What I'm seeing is they had almost an 8 bushel increase over their plot average. Now the plot average, we take the top 5 producers and we average them. So there's an advantage to have more than 5 in your plot. Doesn't mean everybody in that plot achieved an average of 7.9 is actually the number I've got here. And in addition to that, I guess you would say that was over an 11% increase in yield. So some significant results you had there with a lot of your guys.
Right. We did have 10 guys, which helps, like you said. I think there was 1 or 2 that were 0 or just barely negative, but the rest were pretty good increases, anywhere from 3 to, I think, up to 12, 13 bushel.
When you see these differences, and some guys have really high results, and some of them, you know, had a dead even pretty much. Is there anything that jumped out at you or not? Is it just kind of the way that things work out in the real world?
It's tough to see. I know in 2010, you could go places right before harvest, and you could tell, you know, the split. This year we couldn't, and yeah, it's just hard to tell.
Okay, we're available here for questions, and so I got some ideas and questions. Go ahead.
You mentioned all these treatments. Is that a blanket treatment on all the plots, or were there one experiment right here, there, and there on these different treatments?
For the most part, all 4 of those treatments were used on every challenge plot. I think 8 out of 10 had all 4 of those.
Yeah, our rules don't require that they do everything the same, except we want the same variety on each one of those, so we're not making a variety comparison. But the next guy on their team can have a different variety. Just within that one field, we want the same variety. And they can do different things, but usually a sponsor comes in and says, we got some suggestions for you, and that's what I think probably helped guide that.
What was the growth regulating product and what was the use of that? What did we try to promote?
Radiate, we use it in every load of chemical we take out on soybeans. It's over the top.
Every load, you talking even herbicides?
With the herbicides, that's the only time we use it. And every load and basically enhance root growth.
Nothing foliar, it just,
You know, it's basically root benefits. Kind of a jump.
what was the cost benefit?
The whole, you're talking probably $27, $28 total.
That much more profit, or?
No, $28 cost.
Yeah.
Was that with application or just product only?
That's with application. We're only talking 1 extra application. The radiate goes in with the herbicide early, and then R3.
Row width and population?
They varied. Most of them are 15 and 30s. I don't think we had any drilled beans. 15 and 30s, and anywhere from 130 to 180.
On those fields, the plots where there was little difference, did you look to see if there was disease pressure and how that compared? In other words, I wonder how much of that yield difference might have been due to disease pressure that was headed off by the fungicide?
We did look for disease pressure in all the plots, and it's just the way it happened this year. We had very little disease pressure in my area.
I've often said I wish we had this program going in 2009, because we were fighting all kinds of things in the state of Illinois. White mold and sudden death were in the same fields, and other things that were showing up. And we've had a pretty disease-free season in 10 and 11 both, so I'm interested to see what happens as we continue year after year on that. Yes.
Were these plots a very mix of tillage practices, like clean till and no till?
Yeah, I mean, there was there was some no-till, most of them were conventional till, I'd say about half and half actually.
Did any of these increases jump out at you on different cultural practices?
Not really, not that it's not something we really looked at either, I'm not saying, but I think the one that was 13 bushel was actually no-till.
Possibly see a more significant increase with these treatments in a no-till situation than over conventional.
Well, that's possible. Like I said, we didn't really look at it, and we still could.
I guess that's another reason we like to see lots of these things, that we can start to get correlations that we have confidence in. So when you have one team like this, and you know, he's being honest and saying, well, it's hard to sort out some of that when you look at it for 1 year, but I think multiple years and working with your growers over time, and then having multiple teams that we can compare, there's a lot of opportunity there. Yes.
Planting date across the plots, where they are early, various planting dates.
Various. It's
Did
just,
you
see,
notice a difference in yield from early versus later planted?
not so much, well, but our latest planted this year wouldn't have been
Very late.
June 1st in our plots. I mean, there were some guys got some late beans in, but in our plots, there wasn't anything that was real late.
Okay, would you like to stick around here in case we have some more questions for you, and, or else you can, yeah, that would be great. And I'm going to ask Scott, would you like to tell us a little bit about that? And well, I'm trying to think of how to do this, because we got BASF that represents a lot of these teams, and then we also have Jeff here as a sponsor. So how do you want to put your presentation together? And AJ, how do you think I ought to run this thing? I'm real casual today. Yeah, why don't you go ahead, and then I'm going to let him have a chance too.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Hi, I'm Jeff Brown. For those of, well, most of you don't know who I am. I'm an agronomist with Stone Seed Group, and with me we've got Scott Good and John Landon, one of our team members, and Scott is actually our team captain that we had in Region 5. And first of all, I'd like to thank Jim for his help this year, because it's been quite a challenge for us at Stone Seed Group. This is the first year we've sponsored any teams, and we had one also in Region 7 as well. Without his help, we would have been in big trouble. So he kept us on track. But real briefly, I had a couple things I wanted to discuss in terms of our team. We're all located in Iroquois County, surrounding the Milford area, with one exception, which was John Landon, and he's located just south of Sydney, so it's near Champaign. A little bit different soils down there, and weather conditions as well this year. And that was one of the key differences that we saw this year versus last year, was just the lack of overall rainfall. So in my opinion, we were very blessed with the yields that we did get. And some of those differences in yield, which we had some pretty big fluctuations within our region, I think were attributed to soil type. Okay, now granted that we have these side by side, but nonetheless, little subtle differences in soil type. When you're looking at maybe a 16-inch total rainfall between the 1st of June and the 1st of September, is going to make a big difference. So, get the notes out here, guys. Since Stone Seed Group was a sponsor for this test, our only requirement was, of course, that they would plant a stone soybean variety. So we had 3 different varieties that were planted amongst the 10 individuals on the team. 2 R2701s, 2 R3001s, 2 R3401s were the 3 different varieties that were used. 2 R3401s was an outstanding soybean variety in testing in 2010. So most of our participants went that direction. These are all Roundup Ready 2s. All were also treated with seed treatment, which is acceleron with fungicide and insecticide. So that was the foundation that we went to the field with. In terms of row spacing, and I'm kind of following Dustin's line of questioning, try to hopes to answer those. We had participants primarily in 15-inch rows, and we had 1 30-inch row. And it didn't seem that there was a whole lot of difference between those types of management schemes. Planting populations were all around that 140,000 range. But it was real tight, 140 to 145,000. And date of planting, you know, East Central Illinois was challenged with a lot of rain early on, so we got in late planting corn and they got in and planted their beets. So population wasn't super early. I think the earliest we had was about the 10th of May, and it stretched out, Scott, till close to first week of June. And in answer to that question, whether we saw a difference in those plant populations, most definitely, or the planting dates, most definitely we did. I'd say it probably was a 10 bushel difference right there. So planting date does play a big role in this. Tillage, most of our participants were minimum till, so they would just come in and field cultivate. They all used a pre-plant herbicide program surrounding the Roundup system. The bulk majority used a pre-emergence type of herbicide as well, or residual herbicide, to give them longer season control. And we did have 3 of our 5 participants put on some conventional fertilizer as well, meaning dry fertilizer in terms of, say, 100 pounds of potash, a couple 100 pounds of a combination of MAP and potash, and one participant puts all of his plow down on a head of soybeans for the corn-soybean rotation. So he had quite a bit of fertilizer down. But this would have been on both the challenge and control plots as well. So all those things discussed, really the applications came with the R3 and R5 time period, soybean growth. All plots had insecticide, fungicide applied, and these were various products, primarily headline for fungicide, but we had other products as well. Some other products that we'll have John and Scott talk about a little bit. Micro Mix, Romax, Bioforage was used frequently, and Sugar Mover. So those were all in the R3, R5 location. And really what we all learned from this, the weather really was a determining factor in what happened here. And as I mentioned, soil type, I think, also played somewhat of a role as well. And you really, if we look back on what we did organize this, but I think we do a better job organizing it for this year in terms of trying to get more standardized treatments out there, so that we can, as a group, learn a little more from it as well. So, the key thing too, Jim, is to take home some ideas that we learned from this session as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to one of you guys. John, you care to tell the group what you did?
Yeah, I've asked John if he would share a little bit, because he did have a significant yield increase, and I just heard now that we were in a little different area than the rest of those guys. You're in different soil types.
I'm John Lannon. I'm, like I said, in southern Champaign County, and did have, like I said, was interested. I was already going to do the study before they came up. Stone's team group came to me and tried to get a team going, so I got into it. I was going to do the high yield just on my own farm just to try it anyway. So, like I said, in cost, I'm about like Kip. Cost isn't a matter. I'm doing it on a small acreage to start with, but over the last 2 or 3 years, I've increased those to, instead of a 10-acre plot on corn, I'm doing a 40 and an 80. I mean, I've seen the advantages, and right now the money's out there. I've got to try to learn now, so that's what I'm doing right now. So I mean, that's where I was doing the plots anyway, got into the team with it, and like I said, my biggest thing is, like I said, I showed a big increase. My problem is trying to keep a true side-by-side, because you show these many products, I want to see which product is. And if I put a program out there and I did 5 different applications or 5 different things, it's hard I want to try to isolate that there against these 3 programs here and then this one by itself. So I did run into issues of getting a good true side-by-side, but I did see a significant yield increase on a lot of programs. But like I said, cost wasn't a factor. Yes, the increase did show a profit to me this year on my beans. And I'm doing it again, like I said, it was actually on a 7-acre field, but like I said, I don't know, I probably had 7, 8 different things I was trying. So trying to isolate them. I mean, I was side dressing my corn, so went out side dressed 20 gallons to 28% on it. didn't see a big advantage to that, but I've talked to some other guys, that needs to be higher to see advantage of high side dressing, putting nitrogen, sounds like it needs to be 90 units in, not my 35 to 40 that I put on, but, I mean, I had the applicator hooked up in the corn, and so I did it. You know, to me, it didn't prove, so I'm not sure that I'll try it again, but, I mean, like I said, I did use the BioForge products, the Stoller products, because I had a neighbor that was doing some of the products, so I got into the products were there. One of the big advantages I think I did see, the biggest advantage was late, probably R3 to R5 range, probably trying to push it to R5, came in with my fungicide, insecticide, a BioForge, it was a pint of BioForge, and then their sugar removal product. And that seemed this year to hit on mine as probably a product to hit. But it's 1 year, one place. But I have several guys in the area that do kind of a similar type application seem to think that product hit. I mean, that seemed to give an advantage. So a lot of my products, as I went to a true side, this product by itself, I was having a hard time picking up on yield map that actually, I mean, I'm a big believer in the yield maps, because I want to see it. If I can't see it on the yield map, a weight card can say this strip and this strip, yes, there is that there, but 20 acres and 20 acres, soil types and my farms change too much. It doesn't give me a true, this 20 acres and outfield, this 20 acres by 10 bushel, and it has nothing to do with the product. It's the soil type or something condition going on that field, so I want to see a side by side. And so that's where I go to my yield maps, and I put it down to half bushel, bushel. If I can't pick a line out where I stop and start the product, but you've got to harvest that line. You can't harvest 4 rows and 5 rows. I mean, you've got to harvest that line, and I do it. I mean, I want to, and I have it set up as this is a test side by side, and if I can't see that line, to me that thing's significant. So I mean, I like to do a lot of that type of testing.
So can I jump in with a question here? On your example that we actually had it up on the board there. Was this kind of a kitchen sink thing that you threw a lot at, or was this one of those where you just had?
I threw.
You had everything thrown at this.
To me, I threw everything at it. I mean, I mean, if I got to do it, I mean, but like I said, when it came down to it, that true side by side, I mean, that number to me was maybe skewed more than what it should be because I think the one side is in my area, I got by farm on the rain, so I mean that field actually has probably some 10% slope ground in it.
So did not feel real good about those comparisons then?
Well, I think that's probably stretching it. I would say if you cut that in half, it's probably more realistic because I think the soil type played on because of where I was cutting. There was probably that much, and there was probably half of that advantage was maybe due to soil types more on one side or the other, but where I drew my line in the field as I did all my tests, as you start, okay, well this applicator is 90 foot, this one I'm spraying 60 foot, and trying to keep a good side by side line, and I've learned, because I guess I learned from this project. I mean the test was I would probably this year I'm going to pick a field that is more of an even soil type clear across it, and try to get me a line more of that because I said and not every year the soil type makes a difference. This year was the moisture issue we had with, like I said, we were fine with moisture until June 28th, and then basically it kind of stopped raining. And
So the question is for either Jeff or John here. You guys must have presented it pretty thoroughly after you heard the other questions. Yeah, go ahead.
In the study, you guys do account for a number of years the soybeans haven't been grown in a particular field.
Mine's rotated, because basically the year before it was the same field I had my kind of my high yield plot, but I mean my soil tests don't show, I mean it's a grounded piece that I've owned for 20 years, and yes, I mean my soil tests are up, I mean they're not outrageous,
I mean, how many years of corn was planted?
50-50?
It's rotated, it's corn beans, I mean year before I had corn on it, and so I mean it's definitely, yeah, I mean 'cause I know, yeah, a two-year bean or corn crop will give me 5 bushel better beans on my testing over 15, 20 years. I mean.
That is a question we ask with the data on the yield challenges. How many years has it been since you've had beans in it?
It's a rotated field.
What about planting day?
I was May 17th, was a lot later than I wanted to be planning for it, but
That's what I wondered, if you had nothing else to do but plant these beans.
no, I planted, there was 70 acres in the field, I planted them all, and it wasn't the first field of beans I planted because the field wasn't fit, so I mean, we started the 15th and we finished the 19th planting beans.
Yeah, but this coming year, if you got your druthers.
Oh, I'll be planting, I would like to plant the April 15th if I can get a chance. I've done it a couple of years, I've gone out planting corn, and I've actually, if you drive the planter slow enough without changing the plant, you can plant beans with the corn plates in at about 2 miles an hour. One afternoon, I got done with the field, I did go ahead, because I want to plant early beans, everybody plants on field. I wasn't gonna take the time to switch over my planter to plant a 5-acre field of beans, so, but you can't drive much faster, that's still get 140,000. What I did is I actually did 15-inch rows, I double planted the field, so I was only trying to put it down about 160,000, so you slow it down, but I said about 2.5 miles now, you go above that, it won't keep the beans on plates, but, I mean, otherwise, if I would wanted a high yield, I think there is some today, but the last couple of years I've done that real early. I haven't seen a 10 bushel increase by planting 2 weeks earlier, or 3 weeks earlier with my beans, but, I mean, to get high yields, for corn, beans, both, my yield monitor shows you've got to be planting, on average, you've got to plant early.
I'd like to have AJ come up next, and we'll see how much time we have at the end here. AJ is Technical Services Agronomy. What's your title? I'll let you give it.
Thanks, Jim. I'll give you probably a little different perspective, I guess, on this. My role is a tech service rep for BASF, and I'll be blinded here. And I cover basically all of central and southern Illinois is my territory. And I guess before I start, since I'm in the Central Illinois group, we need you guys growing some higher yielding soybeans because we've got a contract to buy out. If any of you haven't heard this morning, our coach was fired in Illinois, so we have we need some better soybeans. So, from my perspective, we have BSF sponsored a lot of teams in this contest, and I was involved initially with Jim and the group in planning this back in probably late 2009, I would say. And so we were involved in 2010. We had about 6 teams and 44 growers that completed the contest across the state. And in 2011, we were up at about completed growers was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 to 110 across about 12 different teams. So I'm going to give you a broad spectrum. I'm glad Dustin was here to give you maybe a little more local flavor, but I'll give you a little more wider picture of what we've done with BSF and our teams, and you can ask me any questions you want. I may or may not be able to answer them. But what we've tried to do with our groups is be very open in the process. The only thing we kind of sit down with the teams. One big thing that just from my perspective as a sponsor across multiple teams, we try to get the groups together and sit down as a team and try to, because that's really where a lot of the value is for me is working as a group and trying to understand, one another. What do you want to plan as a group? Is there someone who wants to look at one factor versus another? The one thing you can get wrapped into with this thing is I'm very analytical, so I want to be able to say what John was saying. I want to separate out A, B, C, and D and know the value. And this challenge, the way it's set up, is probably not the easiest thing to do, unless you want to take the approach of your different growers maybe implementing different practices and trying to learn from each other. But otherwise, it's kind of a kitchen sink approach in a lot of cases. But we left it very wide open, variety selection. The guys would take what they'd like to take. We of course encouraged using residual herbicides. I would say the majority of the growers did that. Seed treatments is pretty standard. There were a lot of things going on the seed that I don't even know that I know everything that was going on some of the seeds and some of the situations, but certainly inoculants, and I think even bioforge is a seed treatment, and multiple things that they were doing there. A lot of the products that were going in with herbicides in the crop, and then of course the applications and our R3 timing. A lot of the things that I heard here was very similar in our groups. We had of course, headline on a lot, on every plot, basically. Insecticide was common on pretty much all the plots, I would say, looking at the data. And then you got everything from the bioforges to the micro packages to the sugar movers. Even I think we had some people that may have burnt beans with Cobra. There's a lot of different strategies that were implemented. In terms of planting dates, so we've done this enough now that we can talk across 2 different years. 2010 and 2011 were completely different years in terms of when we could get into the plant. We actually had teams in 2010 that planted some fields on April 1st. Those guys were down in the St. Louis area, and those fields went over 90 bushel. And then we had a range all the way into mid-June, I think, across different parts of the state in 2010. And there was a huge benefit to planting date. And usually my recommendation and with the central group is if I can plant April 15th, April 20th, and that last couple weeks in April and first week of May, I feel like I'm probably optimizing my yield in this part of the state. Once you move further into the middle of May, late May, that's when I think we start to see things drop off a little more. So that's generally my recommendation. And 2011 was a different year. I don't know that we had any plots planted in April across the 100 plus growers. Just conditions didn't allow us to do that. I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm missing. My notes here. I guess the advice I would give is this is a really nice platform. The ISA has put together a nice system here. It's really tough to try and coordinate, from my perspective, to try and coordinate a big testing effort and put something together where we can try to learn something. And this is a great platform for you to be involved, to learn at a local level. And I completely encourage working with a group of farmers. We sponsor through retail groups, and most of these groups had 7 to 10 farmers that we would meet with 2 or 3 times a year, sit down and have coffee and talk about what we were doing. And that, to me, was as much value as anything, was the groups sitting down and brainstorming together. It was a huge value. So I think that's kind of the overview. I'll be happy to answer any questions too.
Yeah, questions for AJ.
Does anybody use any inoculants on any of their seed beans?
Absolutely, yeah. Optimize, yeah, they've, I couldn't put a percentage on it, but I would guesstimate it was over 50% of them use inoculants. Yes, sir.
Are any of the growers using micronutrients?
Yes, and you know, the other thing, I guess, you know, when you do this kind of stuff, I would love for guys to implement some practices into the process. So somebody asked about no-till versus conventional till. I'd love to see a no-till versus a conventional till side by side, or planting date. Implement, you know, let's plant our challenge plot on April 15th and plant our second plot on May 10th, or whatever the case may be. But those things are tough to do, tough to get guys who want to go out and implement practices. So some of the easy things to do are to come in crop with those foliar applications at those, you know, R3 or so growth stages, and that's pretty common. I think probably 95% of the plots incorporated some sort of treatment at that R3, and a lot of them have micronutrients.
Were they tissue testing prior to application?
Yep. So one of the benefits when I don't know if Jim's talked about this, but one of the benefits was they offered the opportunity to go pull tissue samples and turn that in and get tissue tests back, turn around pretty quick. And so we actually pulled tissue samples on at least, probably 4 or 5 teams I can remember, and sent those in and took a look at the analysis.
There's a question back here, AJ.
The inoculants, should we be considering these inoculants just a standard operating procedure now? Just do it, or?
Well, I'd like to be able to, I'm not an expert of inoculants. I think it's a good practice. I think there's value in the inoculants, the seed treatments, all that stuff. I think it's becoming more standard. I couldn't put a number to it or give you a real firm answer, but I can tell you that a lot of these guys that are hitting that 80 to 90 bushel range are doing that.
Other questions? Yes.
Cobra or anything needing to do that?
Yeah, a handful, and we played with it. We played with it on our research farm too. And Kip, a lot of these things are science. They really are science. And I'm, anybody that's in my breakout session here, I'll talk a little bit about this later, but we have so many products we can use, and I think there's so much of it we don't understand: application timing, application rates. The concept to me makes sense, the branching concept, and Kip talks about spraying at a high rate and spraying it early. I think there's still some work from my standpoint to figure out where exactly that timing is and where the true best bang for your buck for that application is. But we do have guys that have been playing with it and feel like they've been successful.
Question here.
Yes, we're headline users. Would you be interested in seeing a show of hands of farmers who do not like rebate programs?
I'm not touching that one.
I understand.
If you don't want to answer it, just take it back to your company.
I understand.
For those guys planning in April, how much are they increasing their population?
How much are they increasing their population?
Or do they keep it the same, is what they would normally do in May?
You know, there's a couple different train of thoughts there actually that I'll just throw out there at you. There are some I would say that are increasing, they may increase their population. I think, you know, a lot of our guys that are planting are planting in that 130 to 160 range. And there's one train of thought that some of the guys may increase it by 10% or so to cover themselves on emergence issues and that sort of stuff. But there's the other train of thought, which I think I'm hearing more and more of, that you know, they're almost planting, they may keep it right there or plant less plants because things can get pretty rank, and you have a lot of time for vegetative growth when you plant early. So you don't need necessarily 180,000 to make it successful. You can get by with, you know, data would tell you probably 100,000 plants. So I think if you can get those early planting, that early planting done, I think a lot of guys are to the point where they're keeping it at that level and at their standard level, and whatever that case may be, and they may increase it once they get to a mid-May or late May planting, but they're probably not going to increase it in that early planting.
Are you seeing most guys staying in 15-inch rows or using the 30-inch rows?
It kind of varies by the geography. I would say the further south you go, it's almost all 15-inch rows or even drilled. Central, I don't know what I'd put the number on it. It may still be primarily 15-inch rows, but there's a lot more 30-inch done. I've never been able to pinpoint, you know, I can look at all that data and pinpoint 15s versus 30s. Is there a big difference? I don't know. I don't necessarily see that there has been.
One of the things I see on this 15 is a lot of people went to 15s because I think they, over time, thought there was some benefits until they go out and purchase that new planter, and then they say, ooh, maybe I should just go ahead with 30 and run it over more acres. So I think it is a hard decision to make on 15s and 30s. I don't think I've seen anybody that's come out very solid and say it's got to be one way or the other.
Thoughts on trying to accomplish more than 2 or 3 things in one pass? I've talked to a lot of guys who are trying to do several different things at once, and we're talking like bioforage, fungicides, micros. Do we reach a limit to what we can get to that plant with one application, or is there synergies in there, or what, have you guys seen anything, or what's off of that?
It's a good question. So for those that didn't hear it, the question was spraying multiple, you know, kind of the kitchen sink approach and throwing multiple things in a single application. Can you overload the plant, so to speak, or the point that maybe you don't get the successful results you want? I don't, you know, personally, I guess I haven't seen that be an issue. I can always come back to the fact that it's understanding, if you are going to throw them all in together, it's understanding the benefit at that timing, and are you using those products at the right time. But I've never seen an issue of an overload or a negative response. Synergy-wise, I could make some arguments in a fungicide, insecticide, micro combination that all of them together are working, and even a bioforage maybe work better as a combo than as a single application. I think there may be some you may be able to say that based on some of the data, but I have never seen an issue with overloading or a negative response from the combinations.
Well, I respect our timekeepers in the back, and they're saying maybe we ought to be thinking about the next stage. So appreciate all the input we've had here, all the questions we've had. I think the one thing I want you to walk out of here thinking about is that these people that are making some headway are students of what's going on out there in the field. So it requires some real attention. If we give soybeans the attention that we've given some of the other crops, we're probably going to see faster gains. So thank you for Stone, thank you for BASF, and just really, and CPS, appreciate all that you've done here today.